Welcome to the Rudik Report. Today is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. If you can, please support this channel by buying me a cup of coffee or by visiting my affiliate links. Your help is greatly appreciated and helps us to continue to provide content. As we have been warning since the inception of this channel, the dollar's status as a world reserve currency is under severe pressure, with countries around the world looking to ditch the dollar and move to other currencies. Recently, Fox News ran a report on just this subject. Take a listen.
Look at this. Vladimir Putin announced this week that Russia will begin using the Chinese yuan for international payments instead of the dollar. Saudi Arabia is also in talks with Beijing to do the same thing. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, they are in talks with Iran as well to consider an economic alliance with China and Russia. And they can even be joining the BRIC countries, which is an acronym for these countries here, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries all have emerging economies. So what happens if our economy and the U.S. dollar are no longer the world's dominant currency? Former Assistant Treasury Secretary and host of the Monica Crowley podcast, Monica Crowley, is here to weigh in. Monica, great to see you this morning. Let's start right there. What happens if these emerging economies move away from the U.S. dollar towards the Chinese yuan?
Well, good morning, Will. It's great to be with you. And it's really hard to overstate exactly how catastrophic the abandonment of the U.S. dollar would be as the world's global reserve currency. Look, since the end of World War II, the dollar has been the safe place to go, and it's been backed up by a couple of things. It originally was backed up by gold, but President Nixon took us off the gold standard, so there's no hard asset backing up the dollar anymore for the last 50 years. But also it's been backed up by the strength and economic power of the United States and the fact that oil has always been traded in dollars. If that were to end, that would mean the end of the U.S. dollar. Look, there is a perfect storm happening right now, Will. The world's reserve currency being that, having that status has been a real privilege, but we've abused the privilege by wholly reckless monetary and fiscal policies over many years, certainly over the last couple of years, which has really devalued the dollar. On top of that, now you do have this perfect storm of Biden's weakness, his war on American domestic energy production, the Ukraine war, and as you point out, because of all of these things, we've got America's enemies led by China forming a new economic bloc. And all it would take at this point now, because we're at this pivotal moment, Will, is for Saudi Arabia, who has indicated that they're open to this, to say, you know what, we're going to be open to considering other currencies to trade in oil. If that were to happen, there would be a complete implosion of the global economic system, but certainly the American economic system. And if that were to happen, you'd be looking at sky-high inflation, just raging Weimar Republic kind of inflation. If you think inflation is bad now, just wait. But more importantly, we would lose our economic dominance and we would lose our superpower status.
So what would happen if the world ditched the dollar and China manages to become the world's reserve currency? The fact is, things would get bad virtually overnight. The US dollar wouldn't be worth the paper it's printed on. Its purchasing power, which has been in steady decline for years, would completely collapse. Let's also not forget that all the US debt that China holds would come due, devaluing the dollar even more. But what does that mean to the average citizen? It means that your paycheck would be worth pennies instead of dollars. Necessities like food, shelter, energy, water, clothing, etc. would become huge problems for everyone. It would mean struggling every day just to afford a meal. You know, everyone looks at preppers and laughs them off like lunatics waiting for society to collapse. But jokes aside, this group has been warning people for years and years. So if the dollar does completely collapse, no one would be able to say that they were never warned. The signs are all around us, if you simply pay attention. But it seems most people are worried about who the next bachelor is going to be, or what the Kardashians are up to now, instead of taking simple precautions that may help them during this type of event. So the next logical question is, so what can I do? Here is where I must place my disclaimer, as I am not a financial analyst or advisor, and nothing in any of my videos should be considered financial advice. There are some areas to cover when you finally decide to take some action, though. The first step is to think about your finances. You have to remember that any investments you have are tied to the stock market, and that includes any stocks you may own or your 401k plan. If the dollar continues its slide and its status as the world reserve currency, everyone's 401k, stocks, etc. would utterly collapse and they would lose their value. With this eventuality, it may make sense that the best way to preserve your wealth is to switch to investments and excess cash into physical gold and silver. Owning physical gold and silver is the only way to protect your purchasing power if the dollar does collapse. Gold and silver have been around for thousands of years and is considered real money in every country on the planet. It is always used to preserve your wealth and hedge against a falling dollar. Aside from this strategy, it is important to store up some extra food, some water, and other items that you use daily that may become difficult to get due to supply chain issues or because they would simply become too expensive and unaffordable. As you remember from the C word, these items became extremely difficult to find and the prices began to soar, so it makes sense to pick up some extra items every time you visit the grocery store, and that would have very minimal financial effect on your bottom line. Another thing to consider is that whatever debt you may have now will follow you into the current reset. You'll still owe your mortgage, your credit card balances, your car payment, your college tuition, etc. The difference is that those dollars that you used to pay for those things will now be worth pennies, so it will be so much harder to pay for anything. It truly doesn't take too much effort, just decide to do it. Decide to make simple changes now. You would be protecting your family should the worst case happen. The time to start stocking up is now. Purchase shelf-stable foods or items that you or your family actually eat. If you can grow your own food in your garden, then start doing it. If you have the means to fence in your property or garden, do it now while supplies are readily available, and if you have the resources to do so. If fencing is not an option, then plant thorn and thistle type plants around your home to deter anyone attempting to come onto your property who doesn't belong there. I know it's difficult to think about these things because the truth is most people don't want to even consider the idea. It's not easy to look at society and think anything's really going to change, but the signs of the times are everywhere for those who are paying attention. No one really knows how bad things will get, but they certainly will get worse before they get any better, and it makes sense to be prepared should the worst happen. What is the worst case? You have some extra food items to use over time. It would save you money anyway, as these things will no doubt be more expensive in the future. Just take a minute to think about the possibility of the dollar losing its status as a world reserve currency with the value of the dollar collapsing. In that situation, if you made some minor preparations, you will be in much better comfortable position than anyone else. You would not have to wait in lines for food or basic necessities, and you would feel much better knowing that you and your family would be better able to weather the storm. Also remember that the skills you have would become a good bartering tool. You can always trade your skills and barter for those things you may need. If you can build, grow food, fix cars, etc., those skills become a way for you to provide for yourself and your family. Sharpen those skills. Making yourself invaluable is a great way to ensure that you can protect and provide for your loved ones in the time of crisis. Thank you for listening, and until next time, this is the Rudick Report. Welcome to the Rudick Report. Today is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. If you can, please support this channel by buying me a cup of coffee or by visiting my affiliate links. Your help is greatly appreciated and helps us to continue to provide content.